and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you all for coming to our special meeting to discuss our school budget for the 2017-18 school year. If it's all right with the board, I'm just going to turn the meeting over to Tom.
Sure. Welcome back. For those of you that are new tonight, we're going to provide a brief recap of Monday night's full presentation. We're going to go into some follow-up questions that the board and the public had and share that, and then I'll turn it back over to the board for their discussion and their questions. But welcome again to our board, elected officials, staff, and community members. We appreciate you coming out and taking the time to learn about the superintendent's recommended budget for 17-18. Again, just providing a brief recap of Monday's data. I want to provide a brief 4-year overview of past budgets for Waterford as compared to some surrounding communities as well as state average. Again, we've seen modest increases in recent years, and when we look at the context of the overall budget for 17 and 18, again, data that I shared on Monday, fixed costs and contractual obligations continue to really drive our focus for next year and really drive the makeup of the budget, with 299 of this budget accounting for fixed costs and contractual obligations. Everything else in the budget is about 0.15 or $67,000, and that's how we get to a total recommended budget increase of 3.14 or $1.4 million. Again, not going through every single line, but maybe some broad categories. Salaries is a combination of contractual increases as well as the addition of several paras to support the pre-K program. Next year is a 2.72 increase over fiscal year 17. How much of the overall 3.14 is that? It's 1.77 of the overall budget increase. Benefits will see an increase, and that includes health insurance, contractual payouts for retirees, things of that nature, by $229,000 increase, 3.7% over last year, and again, the hit to the overall budget is 0.5 or 0.5%. I mentioned on Monday that things such as diesel, fuel, oil, electricity, obviously, those items, commodities are up from a year ago. We know we're paying more in our homes. We pay more as a school district. $169,000 increase, nearly 12.5% over this current fiscal year, 0.37% of the overall budget. Tuition, this is magnets and charters as well as special ed outplacements, $90,000 increase, and again, these rates are set by those entities approved by the Connecticut State Department of Education, nearly a 3.5% increase, or a 0.2% addition to the overall budget. A new transportation contract, as well as increases in gasoline and diesel for our vehicles, accounts for a $71,000 increase and 3.6% over last year, or this year, and 0.16% of that 3.14. All other line items are going up about $67,000. That's everything else in the budget. That's technology, that's supplies, that's equipment, rentals, service contracts that we have. All of those things amount to 1.77% over this year, or 0.15 to the overall budget. Again, recapping from Monday. Yeah.
Why are your numbers different than you have on Roman 2 in your letter?
Yeah, it's looking at different categories, because even within the $67,000, there are fixed cost increases even within that line. So it's just...
Well, I'm just looking at the little table up in the upper left corner.
Sure.
You know, contractual salary obligations,
because this number...
Two different I'm asking for consistency is what I'm asking.
Sure. And
If this table is not correct, then we should fix it, and that's what you want to say. You need to fix it.
they're encompassing two different things, Mr. Sheehan. In the budget book, contractual salary obligations indicates just the raises of current salaried employees. This number of 814 includes salary increases for the additional paraprofessionals for the pre-K program. Hence the difference, but I certainly see your point about consistency.
You're putting up what looks like the same thing with different numbers in two different places. I'm trying to look for differences.
Sure. No, I appreciate that.
So I look for differences and ask the question why.
Sure. Thank you. Budget needs, again, recapping when we look at instructional supplies, those supplies and materials to support our instructional program across the district, K-12 or pre-K-12 next year, maintenance, supplies and repair, and other line items totaling about $12,000. We look at line items reduced. 97 lines have been reduced from fiscal year 17. Some notable ones, as I mentioned, the major one being a decrease in the budgeted line for technology, a reduction of about $59,000 of that $63,000 and down the line. When we look at the overall budget, 54% of all lines in this budget are reduced or flat from fiscal year 17 to 18. I want to provide a departmental breakdown, looking at the budget in a different way, looking at it by school and department, which I thought would be beneficial. I did this last year, and our team put together some of that data for this year. If we look at the request from elementary, again, taking staff out of the equation, those things that are equipment, supply, materials, professional development, textbooks, and things like that. The elementary schools request this year totaled $2,900 less than this current fiscal year, looking at these categories. Looking at our middle school, again, their total requests coming in less than fiscal year 17. Looking at the high school, looking at the objects that the high school has control over and requested, you can see it's an increase of $6,800, but of that $6,800, $6,000 of it is a contractual increase in athletic training services and an increase in transportation athletics, primarily due to the new bus contract. Backing out those contractual increases, they indeed requested less money than fiscal year 17.
Why did the athletic transportation go up?
That is the cost to bus students to athletic contests in the contract that went up. The bid went up.
Same percent, went up 3%, just like the rest of the bus contract.
But if it's within a certain area, they're not charging us, right? For instance, we go to New London.
Yeah, like for example, for the softball practices, the field not being charged.
We look at special services. Again, the object codes related to special services does not include tuition costs. $109,000 increase, but again, backing out those contractual and fixed cost increases from those lines, again, a modest request from special services. Building and grounds. We look at equipment and repairs, rentals, supplies, equipment, and service contracts. A slight increase, I mentioned this Monday, due to bleacher inspections. Again, I think our supervisors and principals did an admirable job looking at their line items. Slight increase in software, and there's the technology budget substantially reduced from fiscal year 17, again showing a decrease in funding of $46,000 for the department. We look at professional learning, we flat-funded professional development district-wide and curriculum development district-wide, slight reduction in conferences and meetings for administration. but it might be useful to see that from a departmental perspective. We had some homework, our team, from Monday. One of the things that I wanted to follow up on was taking a look at enrollment versus staffing levels. One of the things asked of me was, as enrollment has gone down over the years, what's the impact then on staffing? So if we take a look at Waterford's enrollment over the last 4 years and then projecting out an additional 5, you can see there's been a gradual decrease in enrollment, albeit not at the rate that was projected by our enrollment consultant, but nonetheless, we've seen a gradual decline, and we will continue to see a gradual decline. With that said, we do have more students in our schools this year than last year. It will be interesting to see if that's an anomaly or a trend that holds. Looking at staffing during that same time, so if we look from fiscal year 8 through fiscal year 17, a 9 or 10 year period, as enrollment has decreased 14%, the number of classroom teachers has declined 13%, nearly a 1-to-1 ratio of classroom teachers to enrollment of students. It's tough to get a true 1-to-1 because with 3 elementary schools you don't necessarily get that economy of scale when you have students spread over 3 schools. But classroom teaching positions have definitely declined over the last 10 years.
Is that just elementary?
No, this is K-12. K-12. Want me to go back?
These are percentages, Tom. What
Sure.
are hard numbers?
Sure. That is in the budget book. It is in our budget book, and we do have it. I believe I have it in a slide. I do have it on a slide in just a few minutes.
Over time?
Over time.
Oh, you do?
Yep.
How did I miss that?
That's okay. Well, there's a lot of pages.
I thought I told you.
Here's where we've seen some increase both in students and in staffing in recent years when we look at special education enrollment in our schools and the support staff to support them. Special education student population has increased 36% since fiscal year 10. Our support staff to support students with increased needs has increased by 26%. You can see the lines have flipped during that time. Part of the reason we're able to support that gap is the addition of some paraprofessionals through the years. What does this look like in real numbers? You can see in 2009 we had 305 special education students in our district. Today we service 417 special education students. As a percentage of our whole student population, 16.44%. So our special ed population is up about 112 students, while our overall school enrollment has declined. Sure.
That includes 504s and IEPs?
This is purely identified special education students.
And next year there'll be a few more because we're going to offer birth to 3 in our school.
We will, our special ed pre-K, our numbers are likely. Oh, true. They're in that number because this chart shows certified staffing, which includes both teachers and administrators, and there's a breakout in the budget book of just teachers, which I'll point to in a moment. But you can see in 2009-10 we had 273 certified staff. Over the last 8 or 9 fiscal years, we've decreased to 259.53 certified staff in our school.
Further information on page 12 of your budget book gives you all the way back to the 07-08 school year for positions. So if you just do a 10-year look back for classroom or unified arts or special education, you can really see that quantity of people that have dropped. And on the appendix on page 80 is the enrollment history from 2012 out to 21, 22.
Thank you, Craig. Saved me from having to look at items, so I appreciate it.
That's what he's here for.
Any questions about enrollment and staffing before I kind of move on to the next
Board
topic?
members? Anybody in the audience? Do you have any questions?
Would you like to look into which ones of those were the duty-free period?
That's coming.
Oh,
Your great segue. It's almost like we reversed this. Sure. The board requested some additional information around high school class sizes. We talked briefly about the numbers of lower enrolled classes at the high school. I mentioned that some of those are due to teachers taking on a sixth period, which is on a voluntary basis in lieu of a duty. The information I'm about to share with you backs out those, so we get a true look at what the core teaching periods are. And while we have it on the slide, we do have a handout for you because sometimes it's easier to look at on a piece of paper in front of you.
Thank you.
So what we have on the screen and in front of you tonight, by department at the high school, we have department in the first column. We have the number of students taking classes in that particular department. You're probably saying, wow, we have 1,100 students taking English when we don't have 1,100 students in the high school. What that means is there are students could be taking more than one English class, but this also takes into account semester classes. So that's why you see numbers that are larger than the total student enrollment in the high school. The third column lists the number of sections being taught in that department by teachers. The fourth column are the number of teachers in that particular department. So for example, art has 329 students taking classes, 26 sections, 2.5 teachers are teaching those 26 sections, and that leads to an average class size of 12.7, and you can see all the way down to the bottom. We can always circle back to this.
I guess what we were trying to get at was, in the information that we asked for the breakdown of the classes, some of the classes were extremely low, 4 or 5 students. And those are reflected in those sections. But some of the sections had 20, rarely, but some of the sections had 20 kids in them. I mean, there were 55 classes under 16.
Correct.
And so,
some of those are these, which are those classes taught in lieu of a duty. So you can see on this particular slide, we have 12 courses being taught by teachers that would fit that category. I think you mentioned 55 classes that are...
that's the cutoff.
Yeah, so if you back out 12, that would leave about 43 classes that are still under that, and that's where all those numbers factor into this chart. We condensed it so you're not looking at 16 pages of classes, and we can certainly provide you with those metrics. But
So a way to look at it, you have the number of staff, and you know that each staff member can teach 5 of the high school courses. And the number of sections is a little deceiving because some are year-long courses and some are semester, but if you looked at the full document that we gave you earlier, you could easily just do some quick divisions to see, what staff, if any, may be able to be reduced at the high school.
Yeah, and the other thing I was getting at was, for instance, just taking one particular, Algebra 1S Part 1 had all 12s, 11s, and 13s with an average class size of 12.44 with 5 teachers. on 5 sections. We could go to 3 or 4 sections and and do that in a number of places.
Yeah.
But I know it would probably be a scheduling nightmare.
Well, yeah, it actually wouldn't.
However, the example that you picked, so your general assertion, I'm going to agree with.
Okay.
The high school, in my opinion, is doing something very creative to try to catch kids up, especially with that Algebra 1. So if I could ask Andre to give us a little insight on the uniqueness of the high school's offering and bifurcation of Algebra 1 and why the reduced numbers for that specific example, Marcia, because I'm not trying to negate your whole assertion, is probably warranted.
Okay, Algebra 1, we've got everything from some of, our best and our brightest to kids who are really struggling with math as they come into the high school. And so we've made a very conscious decision to try to keep the standard level courses, that's the lowest level of Algebra 1, to a small class size, ideally 13 or fewer. And the way we used to teach it at the standard level was we would take the Algebra 1 curriculum and spread it over 2 years. What we found, though, is that these kids will never be ready for the SAT. The SAT presumes you're taking Algebra 2 by junior year. So this year, our math department, actually last year, as we were building this year's schedule, they came up with a brilliant idea. It was a little bit staffing intensive, but it's really doing great things for kids. We are now teaching the full standard level Algebra 1 class in 1 year, but the way we're doing it is we're putting Algebra 1 on, say, a day, and then you may have noticed what also says Algebra 1 standard link, and you're going to notice those are also equally small class sizes, 12 and 13. And that is the same group of students on the B-Day schedule, and they will still meet together. They may have the same teacher, or they may have a different one. And one day is all the direct instruction and new content. The next day takes the place of, instead of taking the place of anything, it gives them a full day of support and individualized help. And what we've been doing is tracking their progress compared to previous years and tracking their progress compared to our advanced level algebra students. They're in the same place as our advanced level algebra students right now, and they're getting very similar test results. So this model works. It's doing great things for kids. It's getting kids who've been chronically behind in math instruction much closer to up to grade level, and it's doing it quickly. It's just that it's very staff intensive. And we've made a very conscious decision to tap those at 13 and provide that link day. So you are going to see smaller numbers in the Algebra 1 standard. But it was a decision that we made in the best interest of kids. And in exchange for that, we did have those Algebra 1 advanced and those, upper level, Algebra 2, geometry, those types of math classes are a little bit larger this year than they have been in the past.
Don't get me wrong, Andre, I think that's wonderful, especially if you're getting the result. And I'm always a proponent of small class size. I'm just looking at it as a budgetary situation.
I understand. When we came up with this plan and I looked at it and I saw what it was going to do to flexibility for staffing and math, it took a little bit of convincing, but now that we've seen the results, it's hard to argue with success. And these kids are catching up to their peers and they're doing very well. And I'm very hopeful that we're going to see SAT scores spiking and kids doing much better in math due to that intensive support.
How about in the social studies department?
I mean, I guess I would say if the board were to direct myself and the team to come back next Thursday with a plan about reducing teachers at the high school, we'll come back with a plan.
Yeah, I think it's premature until we see how things play out.
Sure.
But I hate to see, we traditionally hit the elementary school, we hit the middle school, and somehow the high school is golden, and we've almost got a prep school situation here with those class sizes. And that's wonderful. That's wonderful. I think that's going to draw people to Waterford. I think that's what education should be all about. If we had $15 million, that should be the case for every class, but...
Right, I mean,
Yeah.
there's a lot of moving parts when you reduce staff. There's other positions in the district, but our team would do is look at
Everything.
bumps and what we have open due to retirements and all of those machinations, if that was the desire.
Which is why I said, Marcia, your question and your rationale is sound, but I just wanted to kind of do a deeper dive with math.
No, I'm glad you did.
We know that's a K-12 softer area that we're trying to, bolster.
Right, we've got 5, 6, 7, 8 scores on SACs that are horrible in math. So it's going to reflect when you get to the high school.
Did you have a question?
Well, I was just going to reiterate that this is a much better setup. I personally know people whose children had to do the 2-part algebra, and it was dismal when they came back for their SAT score, so thank you for doing that, because I know people personally whose children have kind of, for all intents and purposes, suffered because of the old, not that we weren't trying to do something really well there, but this is much better. I thank you for doing it.
Thank you. This was a collaborative idea between the math department and the care team. They picked out the results and they said,
it's a much better setup overall, and I know Clark Lane is doing something to bridge the gap and kind of change that whole geometry algebra, intensive algebra in the 7th, for the more academically gifted, so that when they get to the high school, they're not doing the same thing they did. So it sounds like you fine-tuned it really well. I've talked to teachers personally, and thank them, because like I said, I know people whose their children they took the SATs junior year and they just did not have enough math. And the scores were reflective of that, so thank you. I appreciate it.
I think that a lot of the artifacts of numbers are about schedule and what's up against, if a child is trying to get into an AP class. And so I get all of that. And I'm not ready to cut, but I do think there's some room. So I just want to be on the record for that. If down the road we are faced with cuts after we do our business here, I would like to take a look at that, Tom, and the high school staff, and have you come back with a proposal. Because, I don't want to, it sounds like math's great, but math only has 9.5 teachers. There's other departments with 10 teachers. And those numbers and some of it, like history and science, we have some small class sizes there, too. I think it's early to look at cutting staff, but I think that the high school would be where I would look next if we had to.
I just want to say I've heard some really good feedback from the parents and the students that are in those math classes. And I'm really happy you're helping them because, for years we spent so much time on the idiotic Connecticut mastery tests. They don't help the children get into the college of their choice. The SATs do. So I'm happy we're helping them. And also, I just wanted to make a point that a math teacher, for instance, may have only 11 students in that one class. But his or her other classes, they may have 17, 18, whatever. It's not like that specific teacher only has a few. Okay. So
85 to 115 is probably an average high school teacher's caseload over the course of 5, or for those who have volunteered 6 teaching periods.
Okay.
Just a couple of concerns. I mean, all that is going to be talking about is people services. People services, putting the money into people services is one of the most important things you can do. I think that over years, with Board of Education and the entire county has been well. Last year, the RTM 2 days before its budget hearings was presented with pretty disastrous for the Connecticut situation. It should happen again. So, if there were concerns at what we did, and, granted it was a tough call, but what I would also tell you, we still raised taxes 4%. So based on the study that was done years ago, we just raised more than 2%. So as an RTM member, I'm not afraid of raising taxes if needed, but I think you bring up valid points, because we may find out 2 days before an RTM budget hearing that we're going to pay 1/3 of teachers. What is that in your budget and what are you prepared to do if that happens? You need to start thinking about it now. I know it may be premature, but understand 2 days before we get our budget, we may be saddled in the same situation again. And, I don't want to hear that the Board of Ed is blindsided, because we know now that something is probably going to happen, unfortunately. So the question becomes, what are you as a board willing to look at? Do you have a plan? Because as you know, you don't cut line items. So we get put into a very precarious situation. Yeah, I don't have a problem raising taxes. I really don't. The question is, how efficient are we going to do? What is your plan if that happens 2 days before an RTM budget? You need to kind of think about that now and have a plan. You want to put it out to the public. You need to be thinking about it. Because nobody's sitting in this room thinking that we're going to win the lottery. Nobody's going to give us $23 million again. So I hope you're aware of that, because it's not easy as an RTM member to get saddled with a huge budget and then be blamed for cutting something when we still raise taxes 4% or so. The budget's going a flat 0% budget. So I hope you're thinking about that moving forward, because the RTM is going to probably have to deal with something that is not easy. And you are the Board of Ed, so I hope you're thinking about that.
And I think, along the same lines of what you're saying, is that you have to have the support of the public. And do the taxpayers want to go up 5%? Are they willing to sustain the level of class sizes that we have, or not? I think we have a wonderful school system in Waterford, but is it realistic with our population? And what would be the impact on taxes for the benefit?
And I totally agree with that. I mean, we're ranked 41. That's great. But if you go back to that budget slide, it's kind of a little deceptive, because other towns, and I hate to say this, don't take this the wrong way, they're putting more money into people services and less to contractual obligations, but not as much. And I got used to that. I have the ability, I'm lucky. I get to sit on the Ways and Finance Committee. Lucky me, considering what's going on financially. Everything is based on ability to pay less. The towns that are on your slide that are paying, increasing about 11% more, some of those towns are ranked higher than 41. Some of those towns are ranked higher on the ability to pay less, and they contractually pay less and put them on people services. All things that you're talking about. Not against paying people, not against putting money into people's services, but that slide is deceptive because it doesn't tell you where they're putting their money. And, we get told before the RTM that everybody gets paid about based on the ability to pay less. The ability to pay less needs to be looked at, because there are towns on that list that you showed that are ranked higher than Waterford, ranked higher on the ability to pay less, and put more money into people's services than they do in contracts. Something to think about.
Can I just comment a little bit, a couple items. As far as and thank you for mentioning the governor's proposal. We're likely not going to know until mid-June when the session ends what the deal is. I can tell you the impact on Waterford in terms of, if the shift of the governor's proposal of teacher pensions to the community, $320,000 cut in ECS, and then the flip of the special ed. I don't want to get into the nitty-gritty, but it would be about $1.5 million hit to this community, and that's per the town finance manager. When you're 75% of your budget is salaries and benefits, the impact is people. Our supply line is $600,000 out of $46 million. So it's not in supplies. Cuts are people. So it is important. However, people feel about anything, that if they don't like it, that they engage the appropriate people in that discussion. As far as the comment about salaries and ability to pay, all very valid points. The difficult part around salaries is that this community made a decision 25 or 30 years ago to pay very competitive salary, and what you get for that are great teachers and great staff members. It is tough through the binding arbitration environment to say we're not going to do that anymore. This community, when valuations of properties and everything else were where they were at that time, this community, Boards of Ed, RTM approved contracts that had those raises in them, and it's tough to reel that back now, even as gram list declines and things like that. It's difficult. You make very valid points.
Sorry. Go ahead. Jason.
So I've worked at some of the districts that were referred to beforehand that are ranked below or superior to Waterford. And part of the reason why they're ranked that way, keep in mind these ranks are very subjective depending on what data they use. And part of it is how many AP classes they offer and how many kids they take the AP test. And so part of two things I'd like to mention is that the higher you go in the level, very often, so we encourage students to take the highest levels that they're capable of succeeding and also reaching their potential. They go down as you get higher in certain levels. So if we're thinking about cutting teachers in classes that are small, we're looking at going worse in rank because the AP will govern above and beyond everything that Tom just said. It is a very frustrating thing to hear. Of course, I believe very fully as both a people personnel individual, school counselor, as well as the president of the union, that we would hear these things. I am always in favor. I'm a very much a pessimist. I like thinking for the worst, and then you can always hope for the best. But I do think that negotiation is something that you shouldn't go in with the most best version of. You must think, first of all, will this pass by the governor? If it does, you know what? It's going to hit the fan, and that is what we're going to have to deal with. But as of right now, what is important to us as a district? And that is something we need to work on. If we see those numbers, and that makes us think we have a cut. It's not the district I codify, and that's fine. Things change. In the budget in Connecticut, I know how bad it is. But I want the board to consider that as well, that if we pride ourselves in the highest level classes we offer, that offer college credit, that offer kids means saving money in college, and help the taxpayers as well, that we can have backup plans, but understand what the consequences of such actions will be.
And I hope, you understand too, we have a fiscal responsibility to our town, along with trying to offer the best education possible for our children.
4% raise was not just for the Board of Education. I just want to make sure that's it.
Okay. Amanda, we have taken into account also, I think, that we are embracing the new offering the pathways. And with that, we need to keep at least what's in place right now for the high school if we want to remain appealing for people moving into town, competing with the magnets and the charters and believe me, we have students coming from Hartford to go to school in New London right now. We really do, and if we want to stay competitive and look at it from that aspect, and this is someone coming from who teaches at a magnet school, and I sit on a governance board there and get to hear all the inside scoop. I mean, Waterford's on the right track doing what was presented at the last board meeting, the main one, where we're now able to roll that out and offer all of that. And you really have to take that into consideration. And what he mentioned about, I can tell you personally that I've saved money with my kids taking AP classes and going off to school. Maybe we need to make parents more aware of that kind of information to make it more appealing, but if we're going to stay competitive with Magnet, and it is what's coming down the pike, I mean, they're getting more aggressive in their advertising and they're pushing.
Oh, I know, they're in the paper every Sunday.
And it's far beyond just Waterford, East Lyme, Old Lyme. It's Hartford, New Haven. It's all over the place. So.
And I think what's great about the Pathways program that we're launching at the high school is that was a zero-cost thing. It's great when you can do innovation.
And you have people willing to rework their schedule and make it work. Even at the middle school, they're introducing that and proposing it. I mean,
have the Board of Finance members and RTM members seen those brochures?
We're going to hand them out when we go visit.
They're very good when you go visit.
Language is such a sword that we have to be very careful. I don't think this was your intention, but I don't believe that you meant to say that any of these slides or the presentations that you have seen or that have been put forward by the administration are deceptive. There may be more information out there that could be formatted in a different way, but to suggest that the administration is being deceptive is something I reject. school, this school, there's a good point, but there is more information out there. There are schools that are on that list that send us a similar program. You make a valid point that we're having programs that are similar to that. Mr. Gerard mentioned that the magic school is doing those programs for less a month. So
No, I didn't say that. We're doing ours for free. We're doing ours for $0.
But what ends up happening is when you talk about the friendship school and how the curriculum that's part of the friendship school is exactly cost the same way as in the schools in the town of Waterford. And the cost per pupil is higher here for that grade level than in the friendship school. So it's great that we're having a similar program that the magic schools do. But they're run by the state. You know, the magic schools are great things, but they're also starting to show, are they doing things that we're going to mimic or have the same type of program, and they're doing it for less and we're doing it for more? I mean, at the end of the day, we have to start having programs that if they're great programs and we want to do them, that's great, but why does it cost more for us to provide them than it does for some of the magic schools?
Just only because you use friendship, and I don't want to turn tonight into a debate, because that's not what it should be. It should be about the board's consideration of the budget, but specific to the friendship, you have to understand they're operating under two very different circumstances. One being many of their employees, support staff are non-unionized. For example, they're paraprofessionals. We have unionized paraprofessionals. Their teachers operate under a different contract, and they have no building costs because it's a Waterford building. So when you take into account those factors, only because you use that building as an example, I think that's not an apples-to-apples comparison.
And I can say that New London has very few board-hired aides, classroom aides. The rest of them are day-to-day. They're not, it's very low wages and it's day-to-day. All through New London.
Oh, all through New London.
Yeah, every single school.
And one thing you should know about the Friendship School is that for the last 2 years, they've been over $250,000.
Oh, probably going back 6-7 years.
In fact, that's one of the reasons when we looked at the cuts, we were not told for about 2 years that they were running.
But that's not our, that's
not
not us.
Right. It's not you, but the fact of the matter is...
But you're saying that they come out spending less. In the long run, they don't.
Right.
Because they're running at a deficit.
And even another reason is what are the rest of the managers doing? They're running at a deficit. What's going on with that program? Are we going to have to bail them out down the road?
The other magic school?
No, we just want to take care of our own school. That's why we're here tonight.
We can certainly revisit high school class sizes as time goes on. I think somebody had a question.
I'm sorry.
I
Sure.
don't think it was any of it would be but at our board of finance meeting last time, we were making the sheet by the finance director, and when we were looking at it, it took potential to we said 1.5, we had a 2.5. If you could take in this next fiscal year, that we would have to figure out how to fund it. So, I mean, and to an extent,
Maybe we should get those sheets.
Yeah. Say to the finance director, can we please distribute this to the board of education?
Please, help
And, no, I have not seen anything on your pathway. Yes, does it sound great? Yes. But the people that you're talking to are people who are generally aided. I mean, even though I don't know the pathway, I'm still seeing the budget. I'm still seeing things come across. This is a very small group of the people who, when I walk into the post office, that come up to me to talk about, that I don't know, and grab my arm and say, Cheryl, when are we going to whatever about this school? So it's difficult to reach the public. I get that. I know that. But as we have these things, these numbers looking at us, I would suggest that you make a little bit more, or you make proactive steps getting information out. I know it's difficult, and who knows what the focus is, how to get information. We all know how difficult that is.
And I think what the challenge is now, too, is a lot of us don't have children in the school system anymore in our town. A lot of us, our children are grown, or we have grandchildren. So we don't get the weekly newsletters or things like that from us. So the town has been really proactive on getting more information out. And then with Caroline and and everybody, trying to get these newsletters out to the public, not just to the school children. I think that's going to help a lot. Marcia?
Just a comment. I really think, generally, the parents in Waterford are very happy with the education that their kids are receiving. I'm very happy with the education that my grandchildren are receiving. And I think we have a wonderful school system. I have no problem upping taxes, but you have to get the populace out there to support that to the Board of Finance and the RTM when the time comes. Because I would love to leave everything just the way it is, but I think with things realistically, nobody shows up at those meetings. And if truly Waterford wants this kind of education, which is fantastic, then we need to stand up and speak about it.
I'm just thinking of the good old days when we used to do that. These younger parents, I'm telling you.
And one thing that we don't have a good handle on is what is the impact going to be of, and I brought it up Monday night, the impact of the ED hiring and folks are going to be coming in. They're going to be looking at school systems and what to do with school systems, so they may be thinking about settling in Waterford. You're going to have an increase in student body. But the other thing that we need to look at, too, is training the young man or woman that's now a child, preteen at Clark Lane. When the time comes they're going to be graduating in 7 years from the high school, the prime spot for employment is going to be electric boat.
Absolutely.
Will that child, who is not a college-bound child, be ready to walk in and say, I know how to do X, Y, and Z, and I am ready to be employed there and get that, what their base salary for, a yard worker is going to be in the $60,000, $70,000 a year. So that's something that you guys can handle curriculum and so on, need to figure out how you're going to make sure that child right now in 6th grade, that 7 years from now, when ED is going to be looking for, and actually they're already looking, and trying to build that, but 7 years from now, it's really going to be a big deal. After they rebuild, they're going to spend $5 billion, billion with a B, to rebuild that shipyard to be able to build a Columbia class.
You need a pathway to EB.
Working on it.
Yeah,
True.
You're right.
Yeah.
You're right.
Yesterday morning, getting back to, what's the state's plan, because I do think that looms in all of our heads. I went to a CAVE breakfast, a legislative breakfast yesterday morning, and it was really interesting. Oh, gosh. So anyway, all the representatives, it was mostly on the other side of the river, but Montville, and they did invite Waterford, so I went. But they're talking about the pension probably being phased in, that it will happen over time, that will no way in heck could it be at 30% this first year. And that was sort of a shot across the bow from the state office. They are really looking at the way they are funding schools. For free and reduced count, they're going to deviate now from free and reduced and use the Husky plan, which is why obviously Groton got closed out with the military because they don't need Husky insurance for their kids. There's so many things that still have to happen. I don't think the board can build our budget right now based on what the state might do. I agree with Tom. I think that we have to do the best that we can do right now. With what we know. Because it won't just be us. Everybody is going, if you think it's bad here, Groton will have a huge hole to fill. And so we'll all be looking for answers at the state. So, and our legislators are really angry, and
so are we. Yeah.
But I mean, I think that they're trying to work for us. They get it, they heard from all the superintendents and Board of Ed members that were yesterday, and they're hopefully, will make some way up at the state. But the problem is there's no revenues coming in and there's a huge hole. So hopefully we won't have to fill it this year.
I hope not. Can you move on?
Yeah, please. There was some other items we were asked to follow up on. One of them was due to Mr. Sheehan. We thank him for bringing that to our attention. Was the VNA contract. There was a discrepancy between what we budgeted and some other VNA documents. I know Joe has dug into this. And
yeah, VNA has provided some information that was on the offsetting fiscal year. The fiscal year is 9/30, or 6/30.
Just back up 9/30, 6/30 for people.
Sorry. 9/30 is September 30th, and we are June 30th. Also, the way they categorize some of the expenses or some of the contributions, for example, the town, the next town was giving $32,000, it didn't go to the line item that Bill was referring to, just went to senior services. So I worked with the president over at DNA to align our expectations with what they were expecting. So we're fine. We're budgeted properly.
Thank you. Another item was around auditorium manager. Job description was requested. That is in front of you. Some data around the number of events. And what we looked at was this current school year, and there's projected to be 197 outside of the school day events in the auditorium this year. And then dozens of in-school events, obviously. And these are events, not hours, obviously. Events can run multiple hours, but that was information that was requested by the board.
Tom, when you're talking about those events, are we talking about dance recitals, stuff like that? Is that basically the...
Anything that was on the event calendar is included in that 197.
And that's for
the vast majority of those are district events, school district events. The vast majority, parent nights and concerts and plays and
do we charge for if a dance troupe comes and rents the auditorium?
That would be through Park and Rec.
Oh, that's through Park and Rec. Does our auditorium manager oversee that when that happens?
He would be responsible for running lights and sound for those events.
Okay.
Several years ago, we changed our policy to make the nexus of who sets those rates to be Park and Rec, and we did that in concert with the Park and Rec Department and the Park and Rec Commission. And those revenues that Park and Rec does charge does go back to the general fund, and then the town appropriates them through Board of Finance.
Does this person report? I got the job description. Does he report every day to the high school, and does he work a 9 to 3 salary?
Correct.
Okay.
Yep.
Every school day. And what happens in the summertime? Does he work through the
works a regular day through the summer.
So he works 300, a regular work week, a 40-hour work week.
Correct.
Throughout the whole week. And who does he report to?
High school principal.
A high school principal. Does he get evaluated? Does he or she get evaluated?
Yes.
Okay.
Did you finish my sentence?
Yes.
Overtime for this person, so if it's 9 to 3 and there's a night event, does this person qualify for overtime?
I'll defer to Joe on that explanation.
Stipend. In addition to the salary?
Correct.
Really?
For the drama.
The drama. If the auditorium manager, the stipend would be the drama coach. And then in clarity to Mim's question, when there are nighttime hours, the schedule is flexed. So respectfully to Marcia's thing, Marcia's question about hours of work, it's not always a set, say, 9 to 5, because of those evenings, so that we can mitigate, as Mim is trying to ferret out, unneeded overtime.
Do we have a drama coach in addition to this person?
It is the same.
It is the same person. Is that stipend that he gets, or does he get a stipend for drama coach and a stipend and the auditorium manager?
One stipend for drama to do 4 seasons of productions.
and be the drama coach and the rehearsal.
Which is the, right.
Right.
They're two different positions.
It would be like a teacher also being a coach.
Correct.
Okay.
I went to a play recently, Crucible. And the drama coach played a huge role in that. Somebody was working the lights. Who was doing that?
They engage
The children.
in
Right. They have to be
things like
part
that.
of the working experience.
And he does workshops during the week. He has Wednesday workshops
Workshops for what?
for drama.
But
And
that's part of his
part
job.
of the drama coach.
Right, I'm talking about the auditorium manager. And I have to say, I'm impressed that he's doing more than I thought.
And I prefer to talk about the position
Right,
and people.
I don't even know who this person is,
Yeah.
I really don't. I really don't know who this person is, because they're he or she, but the position, to me, we have an auditorium that is used, a gymnasium that is used, I'm sure, a lot more than 197 times a year. We have a pool that is used for all kinds of hours. We don't have a pool manager. We don't have a gymnasium manager. And I think this is one place where we really need to look. This is $50,000 plus FICA plus everything else. And I really think you could use community service hours for the kids to run the lights and that sort of stuff. I don't see this position as being, in a tight budget, I'd rather see this position go and keep those 11 and 9 classes the way they are. That's my personal opinion.
Certainly be happy to do an analysis for the board. I do think an adult would need to be involved. There's, I'm going to estimate $75,000, $80,000 in equipment in there, $100,000 in equipment. It would still need to be an adult point person.
But don't we do that, I mean, even with this stuff? We have somebody overseeing, but students set this up all the time.
This is much less complex than a lighting system. I'm sure Mr. Housen will give you a tour,
Park and Rec tends to manage the pool. It's the type of thing that if you don't have somebody who really knows the system inside and out, training, and then also supervising the students who are using it, things can go very squirrely very quickly.
All right.
And we've got an awful lot invested in that auditorium. It's beautiful, it's state of the art, and a lot of that is because we have somebody who knows it well, who's always maintaining it.
Okay. I actually came to the meeting tonight, was ready to make a motion to cut the entire position, but I will not do that. You guys just convinced me.
Appreciate it.
And the pool area is managed, am I correct, by Park and Rec? That's school. Yeah, when it would be open for, I mean, obviously during the school day.
But let me tell you, the complexity of the chemicals in the pool and everything else, it has to be just right. And that's done, I'm sure, by your janitorial staff.
That's
We have a dedicated adult to that.
That's right.
We're noting that for our field house, the auxiliary gym, the school, when there's anything athletic going on, we do have a full-time athletic director. And he's there some pretty impressive hours.
I'm sure he is.
Making sure that things are maintained and are, set up correctly, put away correctly, taken care of in the interim. And there's a lot of behind-the-scenes supervision by trained adults anytime you've got large groups of kids in that building.
I had one other question.
Sure.
How many other towns have auditorium managers?
We're still efforting that on that. We did email the region. It's not a terribly popular position in communities. With that said, I'm not sure other communities have them. We didn't ask how many events they have in their auditoriums. We just asked who has it.
Right.
We've received some initial data, but not a lot.
Okay. Thank you, Tom. Thank you for looking for it.
If I can add a little bit to that, I can tell you that different high schools structure it very differently. Very often they'll have somebody who's a drama instructor and their job is teaching drama classes and maintaining the auditorium. We haven't structured it that way, and our drama is in a class after school. And it just so happens that we've got this overlap of the same person. Some school systems will have somebody who's perhaps, the school system I came from, we had a halftime music teacher, was also a halftime auditorium supervisor, which, by the way, came with a hefty stipend for the after-school part of that. So different towns will have different names for it and different ways of distributing the work, but if you really dig into it, any high school with a decent-sized auditorium like ours is going to have somebody where a big chunk of their job is keeping it up and running.
Okay.
My former district, it was rotated overtime amongst the IT department.
Okay. Yeah, and that's what I was thinking, IT. Yeah.
It's a good idea, because we are some of our subcommittees, and I'll give you an example in our Blair where it's ECCM, and we got 46, God knows how many towns. So I don't know if as a policy committee, when you go into study certain suggestions or ideas, it would be a case to get you that information as far as how many towns have it, or maybe we can have a conference with municipalities, if the town spends a lot of money to be members to get you that information. That way, it's a phone call, and maybe you get that information.
Okay, thank you.
Health insurance, Kathleen had asked last meeting about health insurance, why there was a decrease from the initial run to the next run of the budget, and I guess I'll hand it off to Joe.
Yeah, so many of the people in this room didn't have the pleasure of seeing the first roll-up that we had. The first forecast that myself and Councilman Finance were using assumed a 68% increase in year-over-year healthcare costs. In revisiting the rates that were used last year, the assumptions that were made, I'm not going to call them, I'm not going to say that there was contingency in it, but they were healthier assumptions. So when we actually compared the rates for this year versus the rates that we assumed in last year's budget, the increase was not as dramatic as we had expected. Some interesting notes though on benefits, and many of you guys will remember that there was something that went on in 2012, 2013 with the healthcare account. We're still about 1.3 million off of historical highs, and much of that was this board's direction to have people transition over to the high deductible health plan. But having said that, the years where you've seen these precipitous drop-offs in your benefits, I think you guys are back on trend. I think you're going to start to see the 5% increases year after year. So that's about all I have for healthcare.
As I mentioned, we're self-insured, so that's really driven by claims utilization, the amount of claims per year, but we wanted to clarify that. ECC tournaments, we host quite a few. Joe has drilled down on this with Dave Sue's athletic director. The question was, you host a lot of things and other schools host too. What are the costs to us, if any?
Yeah, actually there's really nothing but good news with these. I want to say Andre sent me over something. It looked like we had about 20 events at our school, broken up between the ECC and the CIAC. The gate receipts for these events, actually the first expenditure that gets cut is against any of our expense. The rest goes back to the organizations. Where we do benefit is twofold, right? We get the pleasure of having other teams come to our community and take a look at their nice fields. And the second is any of the receipts for coffee and whatever you want to call that.
Refreshment.
Yeah, you guys get to keep that. So, I was going to say refreshments, but there's another word for it. Concession, thank you. That's it.
So there's, any custodial cost that gets billed to the tournament and we get reimbursed. So there's no...
If I could add, there's one more benefit to us. We're not hiring buses for those.
That's right. That's right.
And the ECC, they sort of deal those out during the season, who's going to host which site. All of the CIAC tournament games, and there were actually more of those than ECC games in the last 12 months, are based on who's the higher seed. So we've had some very good teams the last few years. As we go into tournament play, we get to have that home field advantage, which means more of our fans. It also means our kids aren't on buses, and we didn't pay for the buses further into the tournament.
And we're hosting the big ECC cheerleading tournament, which is all over. And our girls don't have to go anywhere. They get to stay and watch it.
Question last meeting about CAPE membership benefits. There's a handout in front of you what those are. Certainly we talked about it as a it's a significant line item in the budget. The board would need to evaluate how much of that we're really utilizing and if it's worth the cost as we move forward.
Just quickly looking at it, if you go through each item, education, we have sometimes used that, whether or not it'd be more economical to simply pay for a per meeting situation or the annual dues. I think the per meeting would be more in our interest. Advocacy, we don't need them to lobby for us. Negotiations, we don't use that. We have our own counsel.
Let's pay an attorney. Right.
Again, with policy service, most of our policies simply track the statute, and where they don't, our policy committee is perfectly able to come up with its own policies. Unemployment insurance cost control service, again, that's something that we're going to use. Individualized board workshops, again, that's the same as number one. And then you're asking the CADE search services, well, if you use them for that, then you're going to pay them.
Yeah. We didn't use it last time.
When you come down to it, maybe there's one
Hopefully you don't utilize that soon.
And we decided not to use that.
That's right. That's right.
I'm very happy that we didn't.
Me too.
So.
What is the price?
It's about an $18,000 line item in the budget. So, as the board considers the final budget number at next Thursday's meeting.
Yeah, this meeting is just for discussion, and we'll vote at our next Thursday meeting. Okay.
Question was asked, how do we come up with our utility calculations? How does that all work? Obviously, fuel oil is going up this year. Water and sewer at particular schools, and obviously electricity. Joe, the methodology behind utilities?
Essentially a 12-month rolling average, which means you're taking 12 months period and looking at whatever volume you use, whether it's kilowatts, whether it's water, sewer, and then fuel usage as well. Multiply it by what you expect for rates. So on oil, we use the same commodity prices that the town uses. On water, whatever the stated rate is. Electricity, we're still under contracts on the generation side through next December, and then we plus it up for the new rates on the transmission. So it's all usage based.
Do you use consortium or bid pricing?
This one was competitively bid. For electricity. For fuel, yes, that was also competitively bid. That was done in conjunction with the town. The electricity we have to get on board though with the town the next time we go around.
Bill, did you have a question?
Have you done any recent improvements, say for example, LED light installation and stuff like that, so that you using the 12-month average, but the 6 months before you installed the LED lights, you were actually spending, and I'm pulling this number out of the air, $2,000 a month more than the 6 months since you've done that particular improvement. So, really, you shouldn't be using a 12-month average. If you look at paragraph 1 of the board finance guidelines, it says that if you've done something significant that changes what you would pay for electricity, fuel, or whatever, so that, if we look at the table and we see that, the last 4 months are $1,000 a month less than the previous 12, why? And why didn't you take that into account when you proposed rather than taking the straight average? And I bring that up because we have problems making the determinants of that too. All of a sudden they say, well, yeah, we put in LED lights or we did this thing that allowed us to reduce our light. Well, why didn't you? Okay, I don't know. So I don't know whether you guys...
Yeah, valid point. Something we can take a look at.
Yeah, and as we do the retro commission, that definitely becomes something that we have to do. I mean, most of the buildings are all less than 10 years old, but yes, as we make improvements, we definitely would take that into context.
Thank you.
And I got a question on water. I was going to ask this.
If the question's on Great Neck, we have absolutely no idea. It's three times the usage of a similar size school. We've sent crews in at 10 o'clock at night and 3 o'clock in the morning, expecting to see it's not the garden. You see the same usage January through March. We've reached out to the water company to come out and take a look. While the usage is huge, the dollar amount, it's going to be expensive to tax. I want to say it's a $2,000 cost difference between the two elementaries that they have to grab it.
So do they know what the problem is?
We have no idea.
You know, we had an issue within the last year at the high school, and there was some failing electronic valves, you know, the automatic valves. We fixed those, that's been addressed, but, you know, when...
Maybe the problem at the other school.
I'll have to look at something when it's going well.
I'm going to hose from Great Neck to my...
No, in full disclosure, it started happening in 2014. Usage went from 60,000 cubic feet a year to 87, up to 131. I mean, this is...
Oh, that's...
something, you know,
But keep in mind, so even the dollar amounts, my starting point was $1,500 a year. At the end, it's $3,200 a year. Yes, $1,500 matters, but these guys that come in, they come in with backhoes. So,
Exactly.
I agree. So it's 15 and 15, correct.
We'll be engaging a consultant to, you know, we can't...
Oh, no, we are.
We are.
I'm not trying to go to free source first.
Right. Yeah, we've had people go out there when school ends, take a picture of the meter, go back in the middle of the night, take another picture. I mean, it's crazy.
Normally it's just, it's a toilet or something that just continually runs and runs and runs. And you pick it up in the middle of the night and the building's not being used. You can't find out in the middle of the day. Jay's been over there 7 times? Every time there's a little
We've had the meter checked, there's no leakage outside the building. If it was, it's before the meter. We've checked all off hours when the building's unoccupied, there's no flow.
Well, Marcia does have a garden there.
And I have an irrigation system. That's what I thought.
No, he just said January and February.
That's a lot of use.
It's not being watered right now.
It'd be hydroponic.
With ice skating rink back there.
And then the last question I just wanted to address, on Monday I talked about some of the staffing levels for the pre-K program that we'll have next year, a pre-K 3 room and a pre-K 4 room. The question was asked, if the kids don't come to our program and stay at Friendship, will we still need the paras? The answer is yes, because these are obviously kids identified for para support, whether they attend our school or they remain at TFS, Friendship School. And we have the option of either learn, hire the para and we pay for it, or hiring our own para and sending it there. So I just wanted to make sure people were clear about that. So we think we captured all the follow-ups that we've been able to complete since Monday. If there's ones that we haven't gotten to yet, we're working on it, and we'll make that information available as it becomes available. And I'll turn it back over to the chair.
Okay, does anybody have any questions on the board first? Okay, anybody in the audience? Yes.
The custodian schedule, were they there Monday through Friday, or are they there through the weekend? What are their usual hours?
I'll try to get it right, and if I don't, I have Joe and Jay to help me. We do run a Monday through Friday shift, but we also run a Wednesday through Sunday shift. Different employees. And that decision was made a number of years ago, mainly in an effort to reduce overtime costs when there's weekend events.
How late are they usually there still, on a regular schedule?
Regular school day.
At night? Even on the weekend?
Anything else?
We did that in 2006.
Okay, Rich?
There's been a lot of discussion about cost containment, we're in a position, I don't know, like many other towns, that the state needs us to save, needs us. I have a pleasure for the Tom and Mike the other day.
More John.
A lot of research, line by some cases, line by line. And I generally look at the situations of how we can save money. And we have to do it even today. I think I say this just to reinforce probably what many people on the board do. We have to be very, very careful of where we go and how we go. Typical analogy is we want to use the scalpel rather than a broad knife. The guy makes a lot of valid points with the cost and et cetera. It's a tough time. We don't want to cut off our nose right at the same time.
It's a good point. Okay, anything else? Do we want to ask Tom to look, further to see where we might be able to cut, or do we want to just... Do you want to think about everything some more, or?
I'm just wondering, I appreciate what Paul said about not if the state comes back and says, guess what, it's when they do. And we can't speculate what it will be, but we might need to have...
Plan B.
We're going to have to have one, yeah. So that's a valid point.
Yeah. That's how I feel.
I have one question. In Monday's presentation, Tom said that this budget cut certain programs. Other than the friendship school cutting, what other programs specifically were cut or reduced in forming this budget so that what reduction in services the students or the townspeople are going to expect to see when they show up in
I think the budget that was presented, the major program would be the Friendship School. The other areas were in the areas of supplies. I think showed those today. Before this, we even saw this budget, we eliminated over $500,000 from initial requests. And I can tell you those requests were valid. They were things needed to support classrooms that we're not going to purchase, didn't even make it into the budget that was presented to the board. And those, are reductions in materials that teachers felt that they needed to teach their classes. But program-wise, friendship is the major nugget.
You do have a loss of teams, 2 teams at the middle school, and that was based on enrollment.
2 teachers, 1 team, yes.
1 team.
Yes. And that's
so
due to
there will be a
enrollment.
reduction of a team. So if you're looking, as a parent to be on the smaller team, that won't exist next year.
That's true.
Good.
Isn't that a situation of where it was reutilization of personnel that was an actual cut?
That's correct. 2 classroom teachers were cut. 1 is being reutilized for the pre-K program, and 1 is being reutilized as an interventionist to address math at the middle school.
So that's a reduction in zero.
We also cut a half-time teacher at the high school as well. But yes, in terms of, there's an overall reduction of staff, but those 2 at the middle school are being reused. 1 being a state mandate pre-K, the other one to address a need that certainly the board and I identified.
Anything else? Okay. Well, thank you very much for coming. Is there a motion to adjourn? Motion? Is there a second?
No. Second.
All those in favor?